Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy NerdModeOn, and I'll be doing a tutorial for you guys today to show you how to get the best quality on YouTube, may that be 720p or 1080p. Obviously, every other resolution works, but you'll have to figure those out for yourself. Those can list as anything from 360 to 480. Original is a completely different story. I'll maybe cover that in a future video, but if you're looking for that particular resolution rate format, I will not be able to supply it at the moment, but maybe you can check back some other time. So, with that in mind, guys, let's jump right into it. I'm going to try to teach you guys everything that I know, and I know for a fact these are the best you can get on YouTube. Everything ranging from bitrate to resample rates to really anything within the video is going to be correct. I know this for a fact. I've spent a lot of time, obviously, considering that I've created 450 videos. So, I've had the opportunity to check out multiple videos, but within those videos that I've watched, I always see common mistakes that people make. Maybe they tell you guys to use a I guess refresh rate that isn't too normal or just isn't high enough for the social media site that they're commonly uploading on. Maybe it's too high, too low. There's just so many complications. Hopefully I'll be able to fix a couple things, make your guys' videos look better, and that's always the prime goal as a content creator. You always want your videos to appeal to any audience that you're using. It be YouTube, Facebook, really I guess anything nowadays allow video and audio files. But I guess to jump right into it, guys, we're going to do a couple of video things to make your videos look better and give you the image that maybe you have been desiring for quite some time. So obviously a huge notion to let you guys know, and it's a lot easier if you're editing or doing any kind of, I guess, work on a computer that can handle the specs that are commonly associated with the particular file. So if you guys don't have a large hard drive, you're not really using a good CPU, it would be in your best interest to probably upgrade to something like that. RAM is a huge thing. The more stuff you drag into this application, the slower your PC gets and the more RAM it's going to be required. That can be anything from CPU to RAM. I highly recommend upgrading if you're on a PC, like a towered PC, to actually spend a little bit more money to get a good processor. You don't really need a graphics card in this circumstance, but most cases it's in your best interest to at least have over 8 gigabytes of RAM and probably have anything from an i5 for Intel to i7 AMD 6-core will suffice as well. But anyway, guys, let's jump right into it. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go on the audio file and you're going to right click and you're going to go to properties and you're going to disable resample. Resampling is basically like a ghosting effect and or a motion blur that the application dumps onto your file automatically. You don't want that because it looks terrible. It's trying to really give you the notion that, hey, you're giving freedom to the application to do anything it wants to your file, but you don't have to accept the terms. You want everything to be on your term. You're the one making the video, so it's in your best interest to allow selected applications, allow selected video FX to be dumped in there at the degree in which you want. You don't want the application to do stuff for you because, well, in most circumstances, that's not usually a positive notion. So you're going to disable resample for all the existing files in which you dumped in. You guys can see I have 3 here. But another thing that I personally do, you guys don't have to do it. I've never seen a difference, but it's a precaution just in case. It doesn't hurt to do it. I've never seen any negative come from it, but I imagine with time somebody will inform me about what this particular button does. So anyway, I like to reduce the interlace flicker. My video is obviously recorded with progressive scan, so there is no interlace flicker or interlaced footage. But it's a precaution, I guess, just in case some little pixel just kind of got a little messed up. You never know. It's hard to say with video stuff nowadays, but it's a precaution. If you guys want to check that, you can. If not, you guys will definitely be able to see that it says progressive scan and it's not interlaced footage. So you'll be good in that circumstance. You're going to want to do that for all the existing files that you dragged in. So just because you did it with this particular file does not mean that every file after it did it successful as either. You have to manually do it. I know there is a selected key you can press to highlight all and then do it, but I unfortunately don't know that. So in my circumstance, I just go through each individual one. It's kind of a precaution. It allows myself to know with the ability to understand that everything has been successfully done to the standard in which I have done it. So anyway, you're going to simply just right click on the video, go to properties, disable resample, and I do interlace flicker as well. And what that really does is I want to get a clip real quick. I'm going to uncheck this and I'm going to show you guys exactly what it does. Because you guys can see right there, that huge scope, it's just bouncing around because of after the shot that I previously or have taken or am taking at the moment. You guys can see all that ghosting effect and you just don't want that. It looks terrible. If you watch a full video with somebody that just doesn't know what they're doing, you'll commonly see this. And it's very noticeable and it just looks horrifically bad. So if you simply just check mark the marks that I've done or the simple one, you guys can see that is now gone. It looks so much better. I mean, there's a little bit right there, I can kind of see it, but that's just because it's cut in between a clip, but it's significantly better than it would be if you left that on. So I promise you guys, if you can do anything, you can learn anything from this video, always uncheckmark that, or at least disable it. You'll obviously do it for the last track that I currently have occupied. Maybe you guys will have one, maybe you'll have 20, just depends. A huge note to do real quick, if you guys are playing a game like DayZ, any kind of ARMA title, Battlefield 3 especially, anything that has a huge file size or really a very large amount of time, so maybe it's 50 minutes long, I would highly recommend disabling Resample at the beginning before you start cutting everything apart, because if you don't know that selected command to highlight all, it's going to be a very fun adventure for you to go through and disable Resample on over 30 or 40 clips, depending on how much action was occupied during that clip and how long you want it. So it's in your best interest to do that at the beginning before you actually start to do a bunch of editing, cutting, cropping, all that fun stuff such as transitions as well. So anyway, that's the pre-stuff. Now we're going to jump into the actual settings in which you will occupy. But first, I would like to take you guys and allow you to understand something that it took me so long to understand this. You guys have multiple amounts of information that you have to link up in order for your video to look the best that it can possibly be. So, for one thing, you're going to want to make sure that you're recording with the correct software. Software isn't a big deal, but I mean the actual settings in which your software occupies have to match what you want to finally render at. That can also be the same if you're using a console. Your TV has to match your settings that your application has to match. So for example, you have a TV, you want to make sure that's on whatever resolution rate you want your final product to be in. So if you want 720p, unfortunately you're going to have to play at 1280 by 720. You're also going to have to record using an Elgato, Avid Media, whatever card you have. Make sure the settings are 1280 by 720. You're going to make sure you go into your actual application, which I'm doing right here with you guys on Vegas, and you want to make sure those settings also match 1280 by 720. If you record at 1080p, which is the native 1920 by 1080, and you're like, oh, I want to do 720p, that's fine, you can do that, but it's not going to look right. It's going to look really distorted. It's going to downgrade a lot of the stuff. It's just going to look horrible. So make sure that you're comfortable with what you're uploading, because you just can't downgrade it just because you feel like 720p is faster to upload. It is faster, but you got to make sure everything is linking up correctly. Anyway, let's jump right into it. You guys can see right here, the information as listed in the video tab is 1280 by 720. That's what I recorded in. I know everything is correct. The frame rate is 60, or about 59.874 frames per second, closer to 60. Not a big deal there. The length of it, you guys can see alpha. I'm not sure what that is, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've never actually seen the alpha change from anything from, none. So in most circumstances, you'll probably never see that change. Field order is none progressive scan, so that means it's P, and it's also recorded using AVC. Audio, 48,000. Stereo, the length of it in AAC, just common stuff that you'll probably see throughout your entire adventure on YouTube. A huge thing, again, you got to link up all your information. So we're going to go to properties now. You guys can hit Alt-Enter, or you can simply just click the button. If you're using 720p, you're going to use 1280 by 720. If you're using HD, which is the highest resolution, which would be 1080p, well, 720p is HD, but you guys get my formula. You're going to use 1920, and you're also going to use 1080. So you're going to have 1080p footage if that's what you want to use, but you got to make sure your settings match your current notions, because if they don't, well, you're wasting your time by watching this. So for the sake of matter, we're going to use 720p because that's what I commonly upload in, because of my upload speed is not drastically high. I have 100 by 5. In most cases, I'm going to give you guys the honest truth. 1080p is only really effective for videos that require to see every small detail, such as ARMA, Battlefield, stuff like that. If you guys are constantly uploading Call of Duty or fun little games like indie games, or really maybe you're doing anything else, but this is for gaming, I guess, in that perspective, but it works for any kind of file. The final result, I would say that if you're going to use 1080p, make sure you have a good connection. Your download speed means nothing, but in most cases, I would highly recommend at least 25 megabytes per second up, because your file sizes are going to be very, very large. They're going to probably push within 10 minutes, they'll probably be anywhere around 5 to 7 gigabytes. And that's pretty big, but that's why I recommend that you guys use a very high upload speed. If you don't have that, you're wasting your time, and it's going to take you 8 to 10 hours to upload a video. So just to let you know, 720p might be your best friend in that circumstance. You'll probably never see a file size above probably 3 gigabytes, which sounds really big, but that's if you're like recording 15 to 20 minutes. So anyway, guys, that's that. Your field order, obviously, we're going to match the settings, and it's going to say none. We're going to use the pixel aspect ratio as 1. We're not going to have any rotation because that's really only effective if you're going to be doing some super edits. Frame rate. The biggest thing to take into effect if you guys are going to upload to YouTube, you're going to have to use 30 frames per second. I can clearly see right here it says 59.874, but YouTube only allows 30 frames per second on their site. For a variety of reasons, it's just easier for file size. But so if you do have, 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second, even 90, you're going to have to tune it down to 30. I like to use 29.970 for a lot of reasons because it at least allows my file to have a little bit of room. So when I'm uploading to YouTube, YouTube is going to re-render your video in most circumstances to fit its algorithm and its overall settings in which it occupies. These may be the perfect settings, but it's still going to re-render it and process it, do all that fun stuff. So it's always in your best interest to have about a 0.3, I guess room 0.03. It allows you to have a comfortable cushion or a safe zone just in case. So just in case you push to like 31 frames per second, YouTube is automatically going to re-render your entire video because it's not following its policy. So give it a little bit of room. You don't have to use 0.03 as much of a cushion, but at least give it a tiny bit of room just in case. So we're not going to turn that off. 32-bit floating levels or video levels, that's what I use. Full range, they're about the same thing. There's really no difference. I do some severe editing sometimes, so video levels is usually a pretty good option to select. You obviously want the best render quality. Gaussian you're going to use for your motion blur type. Most cases you guys will probably never see this, but just to give you a heads up. Your de-interlace method you're going to use as none. You're going to apply, but also I guess I should let you guys know about audio real quick. Make sure you're following your settings. This says 48,000. Use 48,000. Don't be stupid and put like 192,000 because your video isn't recorded using 192,000. You're wasting your time and your files will be humongous. So bit depth 24, just rack that all the way up, and I guess for the best in that circumstance. You hit apply and your video is probably going to reformat if you weren't already using existing information that was being required. So now we're actually going to render the video, but I also like to let you guys know if you are interested in putting motion blur, you're going to have to go to your video FX. You'll simply just find your selected thing. I mean, that can be Gaussian blur. That can be really anything. Most cases, you guys will probably just have to dinker around, find stuff that you're interested in. I highly recommend if you guys are going to be uploading Call of Duty, Battlefield, you'll probably want to add a little bit of color correction. I have my own template. I'm not going to show you. You guys can mess with it as a little bit. You'll just drag in the default one. You'll mess with the colors, and that's about it. The reason I say that is because when you record, most cases it's going to give it a saturation effect. It's going to tune down the colors, so you'll see a lot of the reds kind of become from maybe a really bright red to more of a diminished whiter red. And maybe that's not a big deal to you, but it just increases the video for everybody else that's watching. It makes it look more impressive. And yeah, I guess that's all I got for you. Also, you're going to want to add a little bit of sharpen just because it'll give it a little bit more of a sharp effect, obviously, by using that. I use 0.150. I would highly recommend never using heavy or medium. They are just way too much and they make your video look really weird if you're in 1080p and you're not full screened. I mean, it'll look like giant chalk marks were written all over your screen. So in most cases, use something a little bit less than 1.50. Don't use too much more, but that's up to you guys. You guys can, go about however you so wish. So anyway, I just wanted to quickly talk about that because it's something that people always ask. They're like, oh, well, how much color correction should I put in? It's completely up to you, and it also depends on the application which you're occupying. So anyway, now we're going to render the video. You guys will simply just go to File, Render As. I already have a default template, and in most cases, I don't exactly remember what you guys will have, but you'll see all the existing ones. Some of these are audio, some of these are video, and some of them are all, but most cases you guys will probably just use video. I highly recommend, and I would recommend this with a grain of salt, because this is the only one that I'm aware of that has this particular setting. I know a lot of people are like, oh, just use MP4, MP3. Don't listen to those guys. They have no clue what they're talking about, because you can rack up the bitrate as high as you want on that. It's still going to look horrible. It's going to tear your screen. It's going to do all this weird stuff, and I've never seen a video where somebody doesn't use WMV and it looks good. So I highly recommend just following with this step. You're going to want to use Windows Media Video V11, 12, whatever version you have. Doesn't really matter. So anyway, you guys can see an equal sign here, and it says match project settings. So it's matching my project settings. If you guys don't have that, in most cases you guys probably will, but just in case, make sure you're following all your steps. Your bitrate might be the reason, or I'm sorry, not your bitrate, your frame rate might be the reason why that's being a little bit confusing right there, depending on how high you were actually recording at. So something to take away, guys, you're simply just going to click on that, customize template. You're going to want to go to your audio. I use quality VBR. It's going to give you the best audio you can. I rack it all the way up to the 48,000. So if you guys are not recording with 48,000, K or kilohertz, or what I think that's what it means, don't use this. If you guys are using 44,100, you're going to want to use 44,000. Don't just hit the number that I hit. You guys got to make sure. Remember, if you remember on the audio spot, it did say 48,000. I simply just use this because that's what it's occupying. In most cases, you guys will probably have 48,000, but just in case you have 44,100, just use that one. Not going to make a difference. So now we go to the video tab. You guys are simply going to go to quality VBR. You're not going to change the format. Your image size is going to depend on what you're using. If you're 720p, you should be good. You'll have 1280 by 720. If you are going to be using 1080p, don't be an idiot. Don't use 1440 by 1080. I see so many mistakes people making that. You'll simply just type in 1920, 1080. Everything will be good, and you'll just move on with your steps. But since this is in 720p, that's what we'll currently be occupying. You're going to want to match your frame rate. So if you guys typed in 30 frames per second, you didn't want to have a cushion, you were very confident that YouTube likes you and all that fun stuff, you'll use 30 frames per second, no big deal. If you're like me, I use a little bit of a cushion because I want to make sure that everything is, I guess, safe in that zone, and I like 29.970 or whatever was existing that isn't over 30 frames per second. Your keyframes you'll leave at 5, 100% quality because you want to showcase everything that it has. Lowering this, as far as I know, doesn't make a difference in file size. It just makes it look worse the farther you go down, of course. Bitrate's going to be stock at 6.3 megabytes per second, unless you decided that you wanted to go 8 megabytes per second. In that case, you'll simply just follow along with the steps, and you'll use 8.4. There isn't a huge drastic difference between this stuff, and I should probably let you guys know. If we switch this to quality VBR and you leave it at 100, you cannot change it. It will not let you change it. So you're either going to have to make your decision. Do you want to have 8 megabytes per second, which is really good for 1080p, or do you want to have 6 megabytes per second, which is good for 720? You can, however, use 8 megabytes per second at 720p. Perfectly fine, no big deal. I have to switch that. But everything will be good. Make sure your aspect ratio is 1, because don't use that 1.3 crap no matter what people tell you. Half of the time they don't know what they're talking about. So anyway, guys, that's what I have to say for that. If you want 720p, it's going to give you a bigger file size to use 8 megabytes per second, but it's also going to make the image look, I guess, a little bit better. You're not going to see much of an improvement, or really any, by a noticeable eye, because YouTube's going to compress it anyway. But if you're 1080p, I highly recommend using 8 megabytes per second. You're still going to get a drastically humongous file. But, best of luck with that. As long as your upload speed's up to par, you should be good. So, project now, you're going to simply just put this on best. If that's what you want to use, you can just leave it on this. It's not going to make a difference because it's just going to use the settings that you previously wrote in here. Obviously, I had to change a few things real quick, but just to put everything back up, pretty much that's what your final result's going to look like. You're going to record at a standard, I guess, configurative notion, and everything will be good. You can simply, as soon as you have made your file, it'll probably show up like this. If you want to save it for really anything, you just simply, go back to that, customize it. You'll hit save, type in whatever you want. I obviously have a pre-existing one, which I'll probably occupy when the video is uploaded. But more or less, guys, that is how you do it. You can simply write something here. It'll save in wherever location that you have selected for it to go. It's obviously going to go in documents for me. And that's about it. So anyway, you'll hit render and you are good. You'll have the best looking video that you can get on YouTube. It'll be the best bitrate that is possibly allowed on YouTube. And you'll be using a format that is accustomed by really anybody that makes high quality videos. May that be in the gaming department, such as Woody's Gamertag. May that be in the shooting department, FPS Russia. Maybe that in the blog or makeup department, iJustine, or really any of those kind of people that are actors and stuff like that, that do gaming stuff but also are in commercials and all that good stuff. Ray William Johnson, anything. These are the best settings that YouTube allows as of the moment. I will hopefully make a video sometime talking about the original quality, because that has a interesting background story to it. But anyway, guys, that has been the video. Sorry for it being so long, but there's so much information to get out, and I wish you guys the best. This is NMO, and I'll be signing out, guys. Peace.